Okay. Hi, everyone. This is Chrishanne the Wordsmith. I hope all of you are doing well. I'm back with another guest to talk about another fascinating and interesting topic. And I look forward to a very engaging, fun, and insightful conversation. I have with me today a good friend of mine, Kenyatta Turner. She's a behavioral superpower coach, a radio show host, an author, a speaker, and I believe you also have, I think, a podcast of your own, right, Kenyatta? Welcome to my show, and I'm very thankful that you accepted my invite.
Thank you, Chrishanne. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me. I appreciate you asking. I'm honored to do it.
Okay, would you like to build more on what I just mentioned? I just gave a brief introduction about some of the things I know about you.
Of course. So I basically help my clients to decode their human behavior so that they can optimize their performance in life and business. They can enhance their relationships in life and business, and basically just have a deep level of self-awareness so that they can have acceptance about who they are and why they do what they do. So as a behavioral superpowers coach, that's what I do. I coach, I train, I accredit other behavioral superpowers coaches to use the platform that we are creating. I am a speaker. I am a teacher. I do host a radio show called the Healthy Grocer Radio Show. It's not a podcast just for me, like specifically, meaning I have a co-host that does it with me. And we interview people about all kinds of things related to health and wellness and naturopathic, holistic healing. And that's a short list of the things that I do, but I have a lot of fun.
Yeah, you seem to enjoy dabbling in so many, putting your fingers into different pies and different topics and subjects and all that stuff. I suppose that makes life very dynamic, fun, exciting, and you're always on your toes.
Yes, and that's exactly the way I'm behaviorally wired to have it. I get bored very easily. I'm extremely abstract and very results focused. So, and this isn't me just saying this, like this is my behavioral style scientifically. So I know what I need to keep myself moving and shaking. And I know the life that I want to live. So I do that every day.
Okay. So Kenyatta, can you just tell us a little bit of, perhaps how you grew up, or what you actually originally studied, and then maybe we can build back to what you're currently been doing in these last few years.
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up, my parents divorced when I was 3. So I grew up going back and forth, living with my mom for 2 years, my dad for 2 years, back and forth. I did that for several years, me and my older sister. I'm from Michigan, but my mom moved us away from there when I was like 5. So I pretty much grew up on the west side of the United States. That's where I am. I lived in Oklahoma for a little bit, California, and most of my life I've been in Arizona. And, when I talk about going back and forth between living, 2 years with my dad, 2 years with my mom, it's a very dynamic environment. As far as stability is concerned, you didn't have much chance for that as a child because we moved so much, right? And we would be in these 2 different worlds and sometimes different states. So I believe that through that course of time, it helped me to be results focused. I had to learn to be outgoing because I needed to, every time I moved, I had to make new friends, I had to meet new people or I would have been by myself. So I very quickly learned to adapt and be very spontaneous and flexible because nothing ever stayed the same for very long. So if I was going to enjoy myself and have a good time, I had to move and pivot, right? In the moment. So that's a very comfortable place for me. But when I was 16, my father died. He and I were living together at the time. He actually contracted HIV and he got pneumonia, which ultimately killed him. Okay. Now, I was 16 when he died. He was 39. I used to think that 39 was old. To a
Okay.
16-year-old, 39 seems old, doesn't it? But
Yeah.
I'm 47 now, so 39 is not old at all. But what transpired is at 16, when my father passed, it was like really drawing a line in the sand for me, Chrishanne,
Okay.
meaning I knew at that moment, because my mother was nowhere around. I hadn't actually spoken to her in about 3 years. So I was really feeling I was on my own, and I had to make a decision about which path I was about to take as a 16-year-old who just lost her father, who was alone. So I could go down one path.
That is very challenging and very difficult time. You're grieving. You're
Absolutely
almost an adult, but not quite there. But now, because you lost your father, and he was the active parent in your life for several years. Basically, you were all alone, and you had to process a lot of things and try to plan what was the best option for you.
Absolutely. And my sister, remember, I have an older sister. She's 6 years older than me. So she was like 21 or 22 at the time. That's very young. So she didn't know what to do with me, or, how to manage that situation. So I really felt like I got to figure this out on my own. And the day my father died, Chrishanne, I made a decision that day that I've not wavered from since then. And that decision was, Kenyatta, if you want to live the life that you have already decided you wanted to live, which is mean I wanted to be successful, I wanted to have a great job. I mean, what does a 16-year-old think about? I was the kind of 16-year-old was like, I want to make good money. I want to have a good job. I already knew those things about that I wanted, but I made a decision that said, if you still want those things, then you have to basically grow up right now today. Like, you have to take ownership of your life today. Or
so
else you can go down a different path.
You transition from a child to an adult, which I think would have been quite disorienting, to say the least.
It was. It was. But it shaped me into the woman that I am today. And so I understand, I don't think there's any
what did you end up, that was your thought process.
Yes.
So what did you do next, Kenyatta?
Well, it's funny you asked. So because I was in the hospital where my father had passed away when I came to this revelation. So I'm still there, right? He had only passed an hour or two earlier that I had this idea in my head. But I remembered that I had a math test that day.
Oh, okay.
And math is not my best subject and was not in high school.
It's not your
very
cup of tea. It's something you dread, just like I do, because in my case, because of the teacher, I have a love-hate relationship with mathematics. It's not that I don't like mathematics, but in the early years of my life, in schooling, you can say I somewhat understood mathematics. Okay, but you can say the last 3 years of schooling, it was extremely challenging for me, because the teacher I had taught us for 2 years, and that teacher actually paid attention to the smarter students, not actually the students like myself, who actually needed more coaching and more attention in understanding certain concepts and all that. So that's why I said I struggled, you can say, those 2 years. So I passed the what is equivalent in the US for y'all as the high school diploma. Yeah, that exam.
Yeah. Well, and so you understand. So I knew that if I had this math test, my entire math grade for that class, because I was a sophomore that year, my entire grade hung in the balance of whether or not I passed this test.
Oh my.
If I failed the test, then I would have failed math, and then I would have had to be held back a year or go to summer school, right? So when I remembered that, I'm in the hospital, and I remembered, Kenyatta, that math test is happening today. And if you don't show up and take it, like, this is my 16-year-old brain, going, if you don't show up and take that test, then you're going to fail math. which means you're going to fail the year. Like, you're going to get held back. You're not going to graduate on time. That means you're not going to go to college on time. That means you won't be able to start your career on time and be able to start building this life that you've designed, that you want for yourself. So then taking the math test, Chrishanne, became my number one focus. And I screamed and yelled at my sister and her boyfriend who was there and said, take me to school right now to take
and your
this test.
sister would have been like, what's
she
wrong
was like,
with this girl? Is
no,
she okay? Is she having a breakdown? Is she
exactly? And I was having a breakdown. If you think about it, going back, I was having a breakdown, right? So, but no one could stop me. I said, I will walk out of this hospital right now and I will walk to school. Now, this became my tunnel vision.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? Like, I believe I turned that grief I was feeling into, what can I control right now? I can go and take this test right now. And that's all I can focus on, because that's all I can control, because I feel.
Yeah. So basically I
feel out of control.
Instead of, thinking of it as one of my friends, and I'm not sure whether you had a chance to check out my very first interview, he's a teacher, a mathematics teacher, actually. He hopes to finish his PhD this year. And last year, he became a J. Shetty certified life coach. Okay, so awesome. His focus is he wants to help people to transition from victims to victor. So now I'm drawing the parallel here with you, Kenyatta. So you decided not to be the victim. You decided, I want to be the victor. Okay, I will rise above whatever obstacles and challenges, no matter how difficult or how painful it is. You're not ignoring it, but you will come back to it.
I will, and that's what, then you're absolutely right. I went from victim to victor, going, this is what I can control. So ultimately, long story short, I went and took the math test. They did take me to school because I wouldn't give up. They took me to school. I passed the math test. I passed the math class. I graduated on time. I did go to college. Yay,
Kenyatta!
And so, yes, and I've got
that
two
is
degrees.
That is a significant thing, because it was a very traumatic, disorienting and difficult time for you.
Yes, it really was. But I think, again, like I said, I've got 2 degrees now, a master's in management and a computer information systems degree. I've worked in colleges for 25 years, so I was able, I sit in front of you today, the successful woman that I was at 16 knew I wanted to be, even though I didn't know how. I knew what I wanted to be. And so I honor my father, quite honestly, because when I turned 39, the year he was when he passed away, that I'd already spent 20 years working and running colleges. And I quit my job at that time because I realized my father only lived to be 39. And here I was 39. And I felt like I had I felt like I had the whole
experience with your father's untimely passing made such an impact in your life that you decided, when you come to the milestone of 39, you want to live more, you want to achieve more, you want to make more out of life.
Absolutely. 100%, Chrishanne. So I quit my job, my perfectly good job. I quit it. And I started out to be an entrepreneur. I didn't know what I knew what I was going to do, but I realized that I would not waste one more hour, day, minute, or year past the age of 39, sitting behind someone else's desk, building someone else's empire. I wanted to go build my own. And that's exactly what I told my boss when I left. I'm going to go build my empire. And he says, what does that mean? And I said, I don't know, but I got to get out of here, and so
Kenyatta,
that's what I did.
I think I see why you named your company. There's the word empire in it. Freedom Empire Consulting.
Yes.
So there is
because
a very
I wanted
specific reasoning, and there's a significance and meaning to it.
There absolutely is. And so if I go back and I think about behavior for a moment, this is important. Our behavioral style And Chrishanne, you've taken the exercise. You're a community builder.
Yes.
I'm an outgoing, fast-paced, very results-focused, abstract, spontaneous influencer.
Okay.
Now, these things are established in us at a very young age. And I told you pieces of my story, but I was then who I am now. Back then, I was just as much as an influencer. I was just as much as outgoing. I was extremely results focused, even at 16, at 10, at 12. I was who I was. But as you can see, as things progressed in my life, the fact that I was so like driven, even at that age, just helped drive me to who I am sitting in front of you today. Me and my sister, two different people, right? Similar scenarios, but she processes things very differently than I do. And the beautiful part about it is, Chrishanne, is what I teach and train is that there's no right or wrong way. It's just the way that you are wired to do it. And I was wired to make sure I took that math test that day. And I was wired to quit my job at 39 without another job lined up. That's the daring side of me.
You're fearless. You made a lot of
I wouldn't recommend anybody do that, by the way.
Risky choices, but in your case, probably you thought about it, and it's a calculated risk, right?
A calculated risk. Yeah, I thought about it, but I was also tolerant of the losses. Meaning, if my mind said, "Well, what if you don't go out? You can't go build a business. Let's say you leave and you quit your job and you go try to build a business, and let's say it doesn't work." Well, to me, the worst case scenario, because I'm always like, well, what's the worst that could happen? Well, the worst that could happen is I've got to go back and get a job, And so I'm like, well, wait a minute. If I've got 2 degrees and 20 years of executive leadership running colleges, and I can't get a job, then what was all that for anyway? So to me, I could always just go get a job if I couldn't succeed as a business owner. So that was the worst case scenario to me.
If you, for some reason whatsoever, no matter you put in all your time, your effort, your energy into making the business work to be a successful entrepreneur, okay. So Kenyatta, so your contingency plan, if no matter how much time you put in to an effort and planning and research and all your energies into being a successful business owner and entrepreneur, the contingency plan is to fall back on go find a job, because you still have bills to pay and all that.
Exactly. That was the plan. And luckily, I have never had to go back and find a job. And it's been about 8 years now. That's not easy. There was times when I probably should have just gone and got a job. I mean, I came pretty close to, living out of my car, but you know what? I was determined. I said, look, if I've got to live out of my car to figure this thing out, to figure out what I'm supposed to be doing with the next 20 years of my life, I got to give it the time that is required to learn and make mistakes and do these things, because it would have been easy for me just to go back and get a job. But I realized I wanted freedom.
Sorry, Kenyatta, just a minute. So Kenyatta, so we were talking about options, contingencies, plans. So would you like to continue elaborating on your journey?
Yeah. So after I wound up quitting my job, jumping off that cliff and sprouting wings, I like to call it. Ultimately, about 6 weeks later, I ran into someone at a networking event that introduced me. My mom actually took me to a networking event, and I met a woman named Donna.
Just a minute, Kenyatta. You managed to reconnect with your mom?
Yes. Oh, yeah. I missed that part. So I didn't talk about that. So when my dad passed away, about 3 days later, my mother actually showed up and knocked on my door where I was living with my father. Somehow she knew that something had happened, and she showed up to re-inject herself into my life. So at 16, she showed back up, and I wound up living with her till I was 18. And then we went our
but before that,
ways.
Kenyatta, when did you last see your mom?
Before my father died, it had been about 3 years.
Okay, so
I hadn't seen her in a while.
just a few years. It wasn't a significant
well,
time gap.
That's pretty significant.
No. 3 years
not,
is a time gap,
so,
but significant. But I thought, okay, maybe I didn't understand it correctly, or maybe I'm missing something here.
No.
I thought there was a longer time gap.
Let me clarify why it was significant is because during that time, the 3 years prior, when I would go back and forth between my mom and my dad, typically I would still speak to either one of them when I was with the other one. But my mom was going through some challenges in her life at that time. And she had kind of disappeared, meaning I hadn't spoken to her, so I didn't know where she was. I couldn't even call her for help because I didn't know where she was. So she just showed up out of nowhere and I hadn't seen her in 3 years. And I opened the door and there she is standing there. And I'm like, where have you been? So it was a very challenging time because she wasn't a part of my life at that time. And I didn't want her to be in my life at that time. Why? Because I was angry because she hadn't been around for the last 3 years. So it was a very challenging time for her to show up and say, well, now I'm here to take care of you. And I'm saying, because remember, I grew up that day, right? So I'm saying, I don't need you to take care of me. I can take care of myself.
You may do with just your father. And now conveniently, she decided once things have been settled in her life, somehow she remembers you. And then she says, okay, come, let's reconnect with Kenyatta and have a relationship.
And that's what it felt like. So as a 16-year-old, you can imagine my sense of rebellion against that, right? Mm-hmm. So that led to a very challenging 2 years between 16 and 18. It was a rough years, right? Living with my mother that I did not want to live with at that time because I was upset with her and I was grieving my father. So you can see how that could have been challenging. So we did wind up reconnecting, obviously. And then years later, our relationship gradually improved. It took a long time. So when I quit my job, I called her up first and said, Mom, I think I want to quit my job. Now, she's always been an entrepreneur since I was born. I've never known her to have a job. So she's always worked for herself. So when I called her and said, Mom, I want to, quit my job and start a business. And she literally said to me, well, it's about time. She's like, I was just waiting for you to do this one day. She's like, I knew you were built, like she saw in me what I didn't see in myself. It's almost like I followed my father's footsteps first, meaning went to college, got a degree, got a job because he was an electronic engineer. So he went to the same school I actually wound up working at for 13 years. So, I kind of followed in his footsteps. But then I got to a point where I wanted to follow in my mom's footsteps. And so that was the entrepreneurial piece. So she was fully in support of that, obviously, and took me to a networking meeting where I met someone who introduced me to Legal Shield. Now, I never heard of it before. And I thought that I saw the vision, and Legal Shield's basically in the United States, in Canada, and now in the UK. It is a legal service company that offers legal plans and identity theft protection for families and business owners. So I'm an independent associate with them, and I have the freedom to build my business how I want. So I thought at that time, Chrishanne, that Legal Shield was going to be my vehicle to build my empire. Now, it's been 8 years and I'm still with Legal Shield. It's the protect piece of Coach, Influence, Protect. However, I found out many years later that because I'd gotten a Legal Shield and did extremely well right out the gate. Like I loved it. It was paying my bills, things like that, right?
Okay.
But I realized that it wasn't the vehicle, Chrishanne. It was a wheel on my vehicle. And I realized that my vehicle is like an 18-wheeler. I've got a lot of wheels on my vehicle of entrepreneurship. It isn't just Legal Shield. So
this ties into the email newsletter that was sent to me yesterday about the 18-wheeler.
Yeah. I say that all the time. Thanks for reading my email. However, I do that. So I started with Legal Shield, jumped in both feet. Okay. And then as time went on, I realized through Legal Shield, such a great company, really introduced me into the power of personal development. It's basically, some people
Ah,
say Legal Shield is a personal development company with a compensation plan attached to it, because there's so much opportunity for growth personally. You can't be an entrepreneur and not grow personally. So Legal Shield invests in their associates in that way. And so what it wound up showing me is that who I was and how I could build my empire using all the things I've learned over the course of my 20 plus year career, coaching and developing students at colleges. I could translate that, and being a speaker on stages, even at the college, I could translate that into my own business and do it in my own way. And that's basically what I started doing. And I was also starting teaching at a college at that time. I missed being in the college campus. I mean, I grew up in it. I started when I was 18. So I realized that I missed that. But someone gave me a job offer. They said, Kenyatta, we want you to come teach this critical thinking class, basically is what it is, this seminar at a community college. And I've been teaching it for 6 years. And I teach it once a month for about 8 days a month. And that's it. It's like a quick little seminar that I do for students who are trying to get their GED, which is their high school equivalency exam.
mm-hmm.
So I get to teach personal development, motivation, initiative, goal setting, time management, mindset, cognitive thinking. I get to teach all of that to these students at the college, which ultimately became my training ground for my own coaching and speaking business. So that's how Freedom Empire started to become born, is through my realization that, Kenyatta, you have a very unique way of being able to help people and transform their lives. And you've never even had any formal training doing this. It's just natural within you. But when I learned my behavioral superpowers, Chrishanne, so this is where the story shifts. January 2019.
Okay.
I took the same exercise you took.
Okay.
And I learned that I'm an outgoing, fast-paced influencer that's extremely abstract, very daring, very flexible and spontaneous.
Okay.
And that I'm extremely outgoing, which I already knew, right? I mean, I knew those things about myself, but seeing it on paper like that, and then understanding the science behind it, and then showing my report to everyone who knew me to go, tell me what you think about this. You've known me for 20 years. What does this tell you about me? And everyone's like, Kenyatta, you've always been that way. I have a friend I've had since I was 10 years old. We've known each other since we were 10. We got together a couple, like maybe a year and a half ago or something. And we're sitting there talking, and she goes, Kenyatta, stop. She's like, this is so weird. And I said, what? And she goes, the things that you're saying to me right now, she's like, you've been saying that same thing since we were like 10. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And she's like, you are the same. I said, she's like,
so looks like your friend and I have something in common. She looks like she's very observant. She's detail oriented. She pays attention to details that most people ignore.
She's like, you're the same. She goes, you speak. She's like, you think the same. And so it's very interesting. But learning that information, Chrishanne, is the point I was trying to make, is that I was already on my own personal development journey and really trying to figure out what I was going to do with Legal Shield. I felt like I was at a lull with Legal Shield. I felt like nothing was really going the way I thought it should. I had all the success, but then I felt like I crashed. And I didn't really know what was happening, but a lot of things changed in my life. I was in a relationship that I left. I wound up selling my house. I wound up moving in with my mother, if you can believe that, and lived in her guest house out in Scottsdale. Like, all these different things had changed.
So
because
from living on your own, you transitioned into living with your mom.
Yeah. And I owned a house. I mean, I had bought a house at that time, right? So shifting from an entrepreneur, or shifting from an employee with a big fat paycheck that just showed up every 2 weeks, to an entrepreneur, and there's no big fat paycheck showing up every 2 weeks, and learning how to shift your mindset from employee to entrepreneur. I didn't know how to do that. That's nothing you can teach somebody. You've got to just figure that out. Well, I made a lot of mistakes along the way, financially, just structurally. I didn't know. But again, I made a decision. I will figure this out. And in those decisions and those mistakes, I had to learn from those, right? So ultimately it wound up at a place that I feel like I hit what I consider really rock bottom. I mean, to have to move into my mother's guest house at 40 something years old. Like, what? Like, that was not part of the plan, anywhere part of the plan.
How did your mother react to that?
Well,
that you were going to shift into her house.
I know, right? And you know what's interesting? She probably felt like she owed me one, because there was a time after, when I was probably 25 or so, I can't remember how old I was.
Okay.
She had to come live with me. And so
there was a little bit of a role reversal going on.
Yeah, that was probably the card that I played with her, is like, Mom, remember when you had to come live with me when you needed a place and something was going on in your life? Well,
yeah, very
now
quick.
I need help, you know?
Yeah, very quick witted and quick thinking, Kenyatta.
Yeah. So ultimately, obviously, she let me come live with her, and it was very temporary. I thought it would be like 6 months. It wound up being like 2 years. And that was a challenging
But I suppose over time, both of you adapted to being around each other even more.
Oh, yeah, previously. Absolutely. And the little guest house I stayed in was separate from her house.
Okay. So
that's
you
probably
had
the only way it worked.
She had her private space, and you coexisted, and that's why it lasted for 2 years.
Yeah, exactly. That's probably the only way it worked. But here's the thing, though. Our relationship grew stronger during that time. And it grew stronger because of the knowledge of our behavioral styles. She took the exercise too, Chrishanne. Okay. And it turns out that my mom, I'm an outgoing, fast-paced influencer. She is a take charge, fast-paced influencer. So we have a lot
just both of you are quite close in terms of the superpower, with just one difference.
Yes, we've got some differences there, but we're similar enough that here's what it did. And I want you to consider this for a moment. It identified just how much the same we were. Okay. Which, if you look back in our relationship, that similarity is probably what caused a lot of our stress. Because
you're just saying now what I was going to say, but okay, so continue. I was just thinking that on one side, being similar should be a good thing, but then on the other side of the coin, it can also cause friction.
Yes, and it did cause friction. So much friction because we both were trying to influence each other. You know, we both were trying to it was almost as if she said something.
Personalities butting heads.
Yes, butting heads. My sister is almost the opposite of me. So she had a very different relationship with my mother. She was much more, they were like friends, but me and my mom, we weren't friends. So it took a very long time for us to mend that. But I don't think we would have been able to do it in the way that our relationship is now without the access to the behavioral tool, because through that tool and the coaching we got, we now understood each other in a way that we never would have been able to actually understand. Now, the level of respect that we have for each other as women is not only related to our emotional connection, but there's a science to that now we both can see very clearly. So it really helped us. We've had some very deep conversations in the past couple of years with this information. And I can say that it makes me emotional to think about this, but we're closer than we've ever been, ever. And it's due to the science with behavior that Dream Smart Academy has created with the behavioral superpower. So that's how that story went. So I live with my mom, but I hit rock bottom during that time. I really felt like my business was stagnant. I didn't know what to do. I was very frustrated and I had to get out of her house. But I wasn't making the money that I felt like I needed to get out.
You needed to get out of a house even though you were living in the guest house. Why? Were you feeling uncomfortable? Or were you not satisfied with how your life was going?
Yeah, I was living in my mother's property. I needed to have my own space and my own place. And I needed to be able to make the income that I needed to make in order to continue to live my life the way that I was wanting to live it. And I felt like
you had a certain lifestyle that you had become accustomed to and you wanted to go back to that.
100%. And which I have now, like right now today, I'm on, you know, I'm good. I'm back. Right. But it took me having to really come to terms with a lot of things. But here's the thing, learning my behavioral superpower, getting introduced to the people at Dream Smart Academy who introduced me to the behavioral superpower, realizing that, Kenyatta, you are built for so much more than just Legal Shield. That was the realization that I had. I needed to be free, meaning I was still with Legal Shield, but I needed to be free to coach and train and speak on my own accord. I needed to use the behavioral tool because I believed in it 100%. Okay. I wanted to share that with other people. I wanted to build this behavioral superpowers universe with Dream Smart Academy, and I wanted to be in a position to innovate. I'm someone who needs to be on a track that is about innovation and creativity. And joining the behavioral superpowers, you know, system with Dream Smart Academy, I get to build that with them. I'm their chief behavioral superpowers officer. So when that clicked in my brain, and I committed to learning how to meditate. It was only through the process of meditation that I was able to realize what was holding me back. There's a book by John Maxwell called The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. Okay. And one of the laws, and I don't want to say it's number 16, it might be number 3. Don't quote me on the number law, but it's called the law of the lid. And what he says about the lid? L-I-D. And okay. The law of the lid is like, if this is your lid and the lid is closed, everything beneath it can't get past it. If you're trying to grow a team and coach your team, they can't get past where your lid is at. So if you want your team or your business to explode and this is your lid, okay, nothing can get past it. You've got to lift the lid, okay, in order for things to go past it. But you are the lid. So it's the law of the lid. And I remember sitting on the floor one day after I'd read that portion of the book, and I realized, you know, sitting there just thinking and meditating, and I said, you are the lid. Okay. Kenyatta. You're not.
So that was a very profound realization for you.
Very profound, because what it showed me is that, Kenyatta, you're never going to get to the next level if you can't figure out what you need to do to lift your own lid. You are stopping you. You're stopping everything beneath this, your business, your Legal Shield team, the income you want to make, all of it is right here. You've got to come up or take the lid off.
This ties into something I heard somewhere where I'm not sure who said this, but in one of the trainings that I attended in these last 2 years, one of the speakers or presenters said that everything that happens to you, you are responsible for. And initially I was like, seriously, even though there are other people surrounding you and there are other people influencing you and there are other people's actions that are involved as well.
Yeah. But it's still all me. And so I sat on, and when I had that kind of exactly what you just said, I realized in that moment through his analogy about the lid that, Kenyatta, you are sitting in your mother's guest house right now. Okay. And that's your fault. And if you want to get out of here, it's going to be your fault too. So
is there a specific reason why you're seeing it and seeing it as a fault rather than a circumstance or probably a situation or something?
Let's go back to what happened the day my father died.
Okay.
I basically made a decision to be independent at that time, to take care of myself.
Yes.
And I continue to live my life that way up until this point. So I think it was stemming from my strong need and desire to be independent, to live my life how I wanted to. Now, I made the choice to go to my mom's, of course, right? But the fact that I had put myself in a situation financially where that even had to happen after I'd had such success, that was a hard blow. I mean, really, I mean, I started working at colleges when I was 18 years old. I had a full-time job. I designed my career very calculated, meticulously, got my degrees and got promotions and took whatever job I wanted when I wanted it. I never applied for a job I didn't get.
Yeah.
Like,
So
I
the
was
fact that
good.
things sort of went on track and according to plan for a significant period of time, and then suddenly,
20
boom,
years.
the floor drops out.
Yeah.
So it
And because,
was a troubling time for you. It was a
yeah,
disconnect.
absolutely.
You had to figure out how to get back onto track.
I felt like I was going backwards and I didn't like it.
Okay.
I didn't like it. Now, not looking back now, I realized that that had to happen
Okay.
because the
What
moments
was
of
the
living,
lesson to be learned? Because you're saying
the
it
lesson to
had
be
to
learned
happen.
is that, well, the lesson to be learned is that when I was doing Legal Shield and I was working with Legal Shield, and I was finding myself
Yes.
not really, like, I felt like something was off.
Right.
Well, the reason something was off is because I knew I was built for more. And so the fact that I couldn't figure out the more, and the fact that I was struggling with the business, and I'm living at my mom's, and I feel like my creativity is stifled. You see
so
what I'm saying? I was
felt like things were the ceiling was caving in.
Yes, and I couldn't breathe. I couldn't breathe. I could not breathe. And this little guest house, by the way, is tiny. I went from a 4-bedroom house to this basically a room with a bathroom. Okay, it was with my Rottweiler in there with me.
Okay, so you went from a 4-bedroom to like a studio.
Yeah, basically a studio, right? All my stuff was in storage, like, and I felt like I couldn't breathe, like I was just stifled. Creatively, I was stifled. But it was through meditation that my brain started to open up.
How did you get exposed or introduced to the idea of meditation, Kenyatta?
Yeah, so there's a friend who was talking about it on Facebook. Now, obviously, I'd heard of meditation before and probably even tried it before, but never took it seriously. Okay, but
when you tried it, you tried it on your own, right? It wasn't a guided meditation.
Yeah, I tried it on my own, and I probably was meditating throughout my life, but not with the intention that I eventually learned to do. Okay. So a friend of mine, his name was George. He was talking about it on Facebook, and he talked about a book by Joe Dispenza called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, I think is what it's called. And he's like, I'm going to do this book, and I'm going to learn that I'm going to start meditating, you guys. He's putting it on Facebook because George puts everything on Facebook. So he's putting it on Facebook, and I was like, he's meditating. That's interesting. You know, maybe I should pay attention to what he's doing, you know? And then, so he made this little Facebook group about this book, and I joined his group. And then he sent us a link that came with the book that was like this 20-minute meditation about a waterfall. And I remember going, you know what? I got nothing to lose. I'm going to sit down and listen to this waterfall meditation, and I'm going to see if I can do it.
Meditation.
Sounds
20 very relaxing and calming.
Yeah, and it was 20 minutes, and I thought I could do this. I had no idea. I sat down, and after probably like a minute or two, I was like, I can't sit here for 20 minutes. Like, I can't do this. Like, it was too much, but I didn't give up.
Okay.
I didn't give up. Now, I'd already been familiar with yoga because I've been
doing yoga. How long did it take you to be able to sit quietly and meditate for 20 minutes? Since this goes against your personality and your way of doing things.
Yeah. I don't know how long it took me. I don't remember, but it might have been a couple months. I don't even remember. Actually, I don't know how long it took me.
Okay.
But eventually I was able to do it. Okay. And now I can meditate for longer than that. But
so now for you, it's like at the drop of a hat. You've already.
Oh, I can. Yeah, I can. I can switch.
You can get into the zone. You've already gotten comfortable with it.
Yeah, I can do that in like 2 seconds now, right? But that took a lot of time. So it's been about 6 years since I've been meditating, right? But I made the commitment to it in the room that day. And when I was meditating on the law of the lid, I had like literally infinite intelligence came down and smacked me in the head and told me what my problem was. And I started bawling. I was crying uncontrollably.
Kenyatta, what is the significance or what does it mean when you say infinite intelligence came and you came,
Yes.
sort of
So some
made you
people
come to
call
a
infinite.
certain
Yeah.
realization.
Some people call, okay, so let's think about it this way. We're all energy and matter. That's it.
Yes.
And because we're all energy, we're all connected. And
Yes.
when we ask for something
Mhm.
or pray for something,
Yes.
we are asking or praying to something that is energy, that is
Okay.
not a physical thing, that that connects with us in ways that we allow it to connect with us. And
Okay.
so infinite intelligence is one way to describe it. Some people call it source energy. Some people call it God. It's all the same thing.
Or
In
the
my mind,
universe or whatever.
yes, it's all the same thing. So
Okay.
for me, I was sitting on the floor meditating and asking for something, asking for clarity on this law of the lid and why that's such a challenge for me. And what am I
Okay.
going to do to lift my own lid? What will it take? And the answer that came to me literally like started me like emotionally like crying, like hitching, like ugly cry, like, oh my God, because here's what I realized, I think, is I saw the answer.
Okay.
But what challenged me was
could you accept the answer?
How hard I knew it was going to be to make the change that I needed to make.
Okay.
And it scared me.
Okay.
And it was just a moment
because
of
it's something quite far out of your comfort zone, Kenyatta.
Yeah, everything was going to be out of my comfort zone at that point for me to become who I needed to become. And I'd been uncomfortable before, so it's not like I had any problems with that.
Okay.
But now it was at a different level.
Okay.
It was at a level I'd not yet explored. I was excited, but I was scared. I was anxious and feeling confident that it could happen. So there was too many emotions going on. But by the time I got done crying on the floor,
okay,
I got up and I said, well, it's time to go to work. And it was almost kind of like the moment that my father died, right? When I made a decision because I could see the vision. It
was another milestone, pivotal moment in your life.
Absolutely, 100%. I now had a new vision, and that's what I was lacking. If we think about it, and this is for everyone listening to me here, if you ever get coached or trained by me, you're going to hear me talk about the fact that you need to have a vision, the fact that you need to know what you want. I don't care about how anybody tells you to go about getting what you want. The how is not your business. But if you don't know what you want, then you don't know what to ask for to get it. And the universe is going to give you a blurry, confused version of what you are not asking for. So, but when you ask for it with clarity, the universe is all, here you go. But the key is you need to be ready to receive it. So for me, I had lost my vision. Okay. When I wound up at my mom's house, I didn't know what was supposed to be next for me. And that put me in a place of discord.
Yeah, because you like being in control, right? You like absolutely to follow a pattern, a plan.
Absolutely. And now I want to follow it loosely, but I still need a vision. I still need a path. I need to be able to see. So now what happened on the floor is I could see. So now because when you have a vision that's so compelling that it will bring tears to your eyes, where you can't breathe without recognizing what's happening within you, then you start asking and putting out the energy you need to realize your vision. And when that starts happening, then the universe starts dropping the right people in your life. It starts bringing you what you need. It starts bringing money into your bank account. All these things start happening. And that's ultimately what started happening. And then my mom kind of gave me an ultimatum, because I would sit on the couch and be like, Mom, I know I'm built for more. I can't, like she knew what I was going through because she's an entrepreneur too, right?
Okay, yes.
But she's like, Kenyatta, you need to figure it out and you need to get out of here. And I'm like, well, I know I need to get out of here. Right. So we kind of gave ourselves a deadline, and that deadline then pushed me to not be complacent anymore. It pushed me to follow the vision and allow things start falling in place. And then you know what happened? Things start falling into place. So that was 4 years ago. And I've moved out, and now everything is absolutely on trajectory, you know? So the 4 years since then, boom, things just started happening. Boom, 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 boom. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, like this is like amazing. And things are moving, things are back on track.
Wow,
So,
that's great.
In a big way. So anyway, that's my story.
Yeah. So, okay. Yeah. I think it's going to take some time for most people to process and digest what you're talking about, even though you tried to make it quite simple and interesting and
just
engaging.
My story.
Yeah. So the other day when we were talking about having this conversation, Kenyatta, you were talking about throwing ideas around about what are some of the things that we can talk about based on some of my previous guests and all that. And then we were talking about, personality tests and things like Myers-Briggs. And I think probably you are more familiar and knowledgeable with DISC and all that stuff.
Sure. So basically, and this is a great, segue into what I do now. So if you listeners have heard of different psychometric assessments like Myers-Briggs or Kolbe, Enneagram, Human Design, DISC, Strength Finders, Caliper, I could go on. There's like 2,000 of them.
Wow, so 2,000.
Yeah, there's like 2,000, probably 3,000. There's all different types of, there's the one where it's like the colors, like red, green, yellow, blue, there's all different kinds of personality-based assessments out there. Now, why would there be so many of these?
Yes.
Well, it's because people have an innate desire to understand themselves.
Yes, of course. We are very curious people.
Very curious. People want to know who they are, why they are,
what their purpose in life is.
What's their purpose in life? They want to know why they're different than other people. They want to know who to match with that would be a good match, or understand why certain people they mesh with, but others they have conflict with. I mean,
not to go off topic, Kenyatta, but another thing that's coming to me, I know we're talking about personality tests and psychometric testing, which a lot of companies do, organizations do as part of their recruitment process and screening. So the thought that just came to me, and I believe it can be interrelated, is, the 5 love languages?
Yes. Absolutely. So why are we so curious about this, right? It's because we want to know ourselves. And why do companies want to use this for hiring and processing, right? It's because they want to know the person that they're going to hire, right? So
they want to harness the person's potential.
Sure.
And let them do something that plays to their strengths.
Yes. And see if they're a good fit for the culture and all this. So these exercises exist, and they have for many, many years. And we, Dream Smart Academy, are in the same family of psychometric assessments. We call our tool Behavioural Superpowers. Okay. That's what we call it. And so you've not maybe heard, many of you listening, the company Dream Smart Academy, but we are a Black-owned, minority-owned behavioral science firm. We use behavioral data and different assessment tools to measure someone's behavioral acumen when it comes to decision-making, communication styles, how they learn, how they communicate, how they process information. We measure 500 different data points when someone takes the exercise that you took.
Wow, but why do 500 data points?
Yeah, I think it's like 527 to be exact. So why do I point that out when I talk about the other assessments? Because I want you to look at them in this way. All of the other ones that I named, put them right here in a bucket. They're all together. And then there's us. but we're
Okay.
all under the same umbrella. So
Yes.
why do I put them all in a bucket and I put us over here?
Okay.
Couple reasons. And so those listening, listen to this. All of the ones in this bucket, I'm not going to say all of them, most of them,
Okay.
generally measure things that change over time.
Okay.
We call that learned behavior. So like if you listen to this podcast right now and you learn something new, then a year from now you've applied what you learned, then it could measure that because you've learned it and added it to who you are.
Yes.
The difference with them and us is while they're measuring what's learned, we measure what always is.
Yeah.
We don't.
So those
really
other tests are more related to skills, whereas this other one is behavior.
Yes.
It is a part of the core, your essence.
Very well said. Because a skill can be learned and gained. Yes. Talents that you are naturally wired with, you know, from as young as the age of about 3, 4, 5, 6, they're kind of locked in, like at that time. So for me, it's one of my talents that I'm really outgoing and fast paced. But in the same token, if I'm too outgoing and fast paced, that can become a struggle for me and then a weakness. So you have to understand your style to know that, hey, you know, you're a community builder, Chrishanne, right? Yes. That's your power.
Yes.
But if you're in a situation, and I think you were very high focused on relationships as well, which is amazing. But if you find yourself too focused on that, that can become a challenge, right? So all the other assessments are over here and they're excellent, by the way. Like they all measure something different. We enhance them and we pick up where they leave off.
Okay.
That's why we're so different. And I want you all to also to think about those of you who are watching this. Have you ever given a psychometric assessment to like a 12 or 13-year-old? Well, the answer is probably no. Why? It's because those exercises aren't designed for children.
Yes.
And since it's measuring what changes, you'd have to give it to them over and over and over and over again because they would always be learning something new.
Correct.
Our exercise, we can give it to a 12 or 13-year-old and they will only need to take it one more time.
So just twice.
Twice. If they're under 18 and they're, you know, like 12, 13, we would give it to them when they were 12 or 13, and then we would have it taken again when they're about 18. Why? It's because those things will be locked in by that time and they'll never need to take it again. Now for you, Chrishanne, you took it, a couple months ago?
Yes.
You'll never need to take it again because it's not measuring what's going to change in you. It's measuring who you are. So that's the key difference. And the other difference is we measure financial temperament. Now,
financial temperament. Wow.
Yes. None of the others measure financial temperament. Okay. We're the only one that can do that. So we know how someone is wired to think about money and how they process money because it's emotional, not logical. And
now that you mentioned that, Kenyatta, I think when we were discussing the results, I don't recall there being anything about this, right, Kenyatta?
Well, here's why. Is because when you took the exercise, you got a 1-page report. And that report is one of like 40 reports that you could get access to. One of them, actually several of them, are in our financial dimension. You don't have access to them, but they're already there. So yeah, so the report you got was just about natural behavior, not the finance piece. But you would find if you saw your financial report and put them side by side, you would see a lot of similarities because again, finance is human behavior. You can't get away from it. So the fact that I'm an outgoing, fast-paced influencer, well, I handle my money the same way, which isn't always good. Okay. Right. So
what does that translate to? Are you a spendthrift or?
Yeah. And I'm so spontaneous that I don't like structure. I want freedom. So it's like, I want things how I want them and I want my money over here, but I also, if I have access to it, that could be bad. Right. And so, and I don't want to organize it. It's not my strength. It's not my power.
Yeah.
right? But someone else, that's totally their power. And that's why you need to understand, listen to me out there listening. That's why you need to know what your behavioral superpowers are and what your kryptonite is. Because the thing that's your kryptonite, you may need to find someone to bring into your life or into your business that can help you balance the areas that you're just not naturally strong at. Now, hear me clearly. That doesn't mean I can't learn to be more systematic. I can. And actually, I read books like the 12-week year. I don't, and I coach books like that.
Yeah,
because
we were talking we were talking about it
teaches
about a
me to
month
be,
ago in our
yep,
common weekly community catch-up session.
yeah, that teaches me to be more systematic. So I can move the needle, meaning when you think about learned behavior, I can learn to be more systematic. But the thing I need to understand
But
is
it
how hard
will take some time for you to get comfortable and for it to become automatic.
Yeah, it's not my zone of genius,
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean I can't learn and improve in that area. But consider this. We've all heard the term personal development.
Yes.
But how do you know what to develop? Like if you sit there and say, I'm going to do some personal development, how do you know what to develop? Right?
I don't know.
So
Maybe lucky dip. What lucky guess?
So this report tells me what to develop. So I can look at this. It's like my scorecard. I can look at this and go, well, Kenyatta, you're a 92% on flexible versus systematic, which means you're not really systematic at all. So would being more systematic help you in your overall life plan and goal? Yes, it would. But how much time do I need to spend learning to be systematic versus hiring someone to be systematic for me? Right? So again, I get to decide.
So it comes down to looking at the practical side of things.
Absolutely. And not subjectively. It's objective. There's science backing this. And that's the difference. Because how many times have you heard, Chrishanne, someone say, my superpower is I'm really good with people. Like people say that stuff all the time. They decide what their superpower is. Well, that's very subjective. Not to say I'm disagreeing with the fact that that's their superpower. If they say it is, hey, it is. But this is different. When we say what your superpower is, it's because science has told us so. It's because you can't get away from it if you wanted to. And that's a very different thing. If you think of like Superman, everybody knows who Superman is. He was born Superman. Yes. And he's always going to be Superman. It doesn't matter if he puts on a Clark Kent costume or not. He's still Superman. Yes. So we measure your Superman or Superwoman, whichever you want to call it. That's what we do. So that's it.
Okay. Let's change tack a little. How much has your life changed in the last 2 years since this pandemic hit?
Well, one example of that is March 2020. The second week of March, I was in Atlanta, Georgia. Okay. I was going through a 2-day accreditation program with the company called DNA Behavior, which is our technology firm. Yes. I was there to get trained to be able to coach and teach what I just told you about. Yes. The pandemic and the quarantine happened that week I was there. Luckily enough, the training was the first 2 days of the week that I was going to be there for. So we were able to get the training done. But by the third day after training was over, the world was shutting down. Okay. Or the United States was shutting down. And I needed to fly back home because otherwise I could have gotten stranded in Atlanta. Right. Yes. For an indefinite time. You have no idea what's going to happen. So, but I was able to get the training done. Yes. So I got the training done. My plan was to get the training done, come back to Phoenix and start building Freedom Empire Consulting and using what I learned. Yes. What happened is I came back to a quarantine. So then I had to go, okay, you have this training. You had a plan and a vision. Are you going to let this quarantine stop you?
Okay.
And you can imagine what I told myself. Absolutely not.
Okay.
Absolutely not. So I went to work. I went to work with what I learned. I started coaching and training and doing everything virtually, which I was doing a lot of that anyway. So that was not a hard stretch for me, but I really realized, because that was another pivotal moment in my life. Either you can go one direction, Kenyatta, and just survive this pandemic, or
Okay.
you can thrive in this pandemic. And I chose
Wow,
to thrive.
Kenyatta, you are saying what I was about to say. We are really on the same wavelength.
So I made a choice.
I
And so
agree
I
with
put
you,
all my
because I
energy.
chose to see this pandemic as a saying goes, a crisis is a time of opportunity. I chose to look
Absolutely.
at the bright side. I chose to make use of certain resources, classes, courses, workshops
Absolutely.
to upskill. Because
Yes.
4 years, 2 months ago, when I started doing freelance work, and that was a big paradigm shift for me, Kenyatta. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
that was me taking a big risk, calculated risk,
Mm-hmm.
with not much of really a safety net or contingency plan. And I, like you, like to have a contingency plan backup. But it's not that I didn't have one. Actually, the freelance work was meant to be contingency plan. And then it took a life of its own, Kenyatta, because
Yeah.
before the pandemic, for all my life, I don't know whether you were brought up the same way. I was brought up with study hard, get a good job. Study hard, graduate, get a good job, build a career, and building a career equals financial stability. Okay.
Sure.
So my parents and my uncle, my auntie, that is the way things were. But over time, things change, and sometimes things don't exactly go according to plan. And
Yeah.
when you're working as an employee, there's only so much you can plan and control. So
Sure.
the several years it's been an employer's market. So I knew my last full-time job, if the contract was not going to be renewed, uh, obviously I started job hunting ahead of time, but I wasn't fortunate
Mm-hmm.
enough to secure something before the contract ended. And so I was thinking of options and contingency plans and all that stuff. And I actually have no idea how the idea of freelance came into play. But I do know why one of the services I started providing is related to translation, because I'm a big movie buff, Kenyatta.
Okay.
Before this pandemic, the cinema was my second home. Okay, I love to watch movies. That's my way of relaxing and de-stressing and
Yeah.
entertainment and all that, besides catching
Sure.
up with friends and all that. So, uh, in the before the pandemic, for about a year or two, I noticed that the English movies that were being shown here, the international films, I noticed that whoever was doing the subtitles in our national language, quite a
Mm.
few of them did a very, very bad job of it,
Oh.
because the wrong words were used and the context went totally off. It was totally haywire. So
Huh.
I told you I go watch movie to get entertained, right? So it was like that
Yeah.
entertainment. I was like, ha ha inside here, not ha ha out
Yeah.
loud. I'm
Yeah.
like, excuse the language, but which idiot got paid to do this and they did a bad job of it? Okay. And so I felt, okay, I'm fluent in English. The national language has been a couple of years since I use it. And with any language, if you don't use it, your level of competency decreases.
Sure.
So I decided to kill 2 or 3 birds with one stone. So the contingency plan was freelance. And then it took a life of its own. I started this in 2018, January. And it took a life of its own. And what was meant to be like a part-time thing, while I wait to secure a full-time job, became a full-time thing. And I enjoy it very much. But there's one thing, Kenyatta, that uh, doing freelance or being a business owner, when you draw a comparison to being an employee, when you're an employee, most of the time you've got job security for the most part. So you've got a monthly stable income coming in. Whereas when you're a business owner or you're doing freelance, you don't have that luxury. Okay, it is a totally different quantum and amount of money that comes in. So it's a totally different situation altogether. You're going from monthly stable income to something where you don't know what's going to happen. So of
Right.
course there's the pros and cons of being an employee
Sure.
versus an entrepreneur, and I enjoy very much what I have. And I made certain adjustments in life when I transitioned from being an employee to an entrepreneur doing freelance. I made significant changes and sacrifices. And when I'm fortunate that I was already using the online social media and platforms, and I was already creating awareness, and I had sort of created a place for myself. So when the pandemic hit, it didn't really affect me that much. I just chose to change. I had to pivot. Before the pandemic, the only
Sure.
pivot I knew was Microsoft Excel, the pivot table. So I had to learn pivot as in, okay, adapt. You have to change your approach. You have to change your strategy. And this is when I started changing my style of communicating and marketing my services. I decided to do posts on individual services. Otherwise, previously, Kenyatta, I think very few people would have read my Facebook post because it was quite long. All the services were there, the definitions, the starting
Yeah.
charges, how to contact me, a little bit about myself, and all that stuff. So this is how I have chosen to thrive despite the various challenges and obstacles that have been
There you go.
thrown my way.
There you go. And I appreciate that. So as we wrap up, I just know that there, you asked 2 years later, right? So March 2020, went to get accredited. March 2022, just came back from Atlanta last week, speaking at their mini conference for DNA behavior. I was invited back to speak about DEI, behavioral diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the work that we've been doing in the behavioral superpowers universe over the last 2 years. So that was pretty exciting to, you say what's happened in the last 2 years. Well, one, getting accredited March 2020, March 2022, being invited back to speak about what we've been doing the last 2 years and share everything that we have going on with their team and other partners that use that resource. Because Dream Smart Academy, we're building our own API, our own app. We're going to be white labeling people to be able to use access to get to the resources through Dream Smart Academy. So much has changed. But again, my plan was to come back and blow up. And that's what I did, but I just did it during a quarantine in a very different way. I didn't let that stop me. So here I am today, speaker, coach, trainer, author, writing a book about behavior. Actually, this book right here, I just got to write the prologue for this book, which is called The 8 Qualities of the Exceptional Black Woman in Business and Entrepreneurship. And I got to write the introduction, and it's about behavior. Like I could go on and on. So where I am today from where I was 2 years ago, light years. Where I'll be 2 years from now, another light year.
Warp speed
away,
to use the terminology from Star Trek.
Yeah, exactly. So this has been fun. Thank you so much for having me here and
it's
been learning about you too, Chrishanne.
fun conversation, and time has just gone by so fast.
Yeah.
So I look forward to catching up with you another time, Kenyatta, and
Of course.
I wish you all the best, and I hope that uh, things I think are getting quite much better there, right, in the US, Kenyatta?
Well, I think better is relative, but
Okay.
Well, here's the thing. Napoleon Hill says, who I study his work constantly, is with every adversity, there's an equivalent seed of opportunity.
Okay.
And so things will continue to be adverse. That's going to happen. The key is to continue looking for the opportunities. And as far as behavior is concerned, my last statement on that will be that there's a quote by Veronica Tegleva, and she says, to know yourself, you must first sacrifice the illusion that you already do. And that is a huge component of who I am and what I do. And those of you out there listening, if you want more information, just go to my website, freedomempireconsulting.com, sign up for my newsletter. That way you can get those emails that Chrishanne's talking about. And you can stay in the loop. If you want more information, you can set up a time to chat with me. I would love to,
Yes,
have a
I'll
further
be
conversation.
attaching your contact details. So anyone
I
who
love
wants to
it.
know more about what you've talked about, or get your
Thank you so much.
advice, or pick your brain, they will know how to reach out to you.
Wonderful. I appreciate that. And so, yeah, behavior matters. That's my hashtag. And how you do anything is how you do everything. So that's it.
Thank you very much, Kenyatta.
Thank you,
I wish you a
Chrishanne.
great day ahead. You take care. And as usual, we will keep in touch. Yes.
Absolutely.
And we'll catch up another time. And I'm sure we'll talk about something else, which also will be of interest, and something very different so that we can exchange ideas and thoughts, and create awareness on some
Absolutely.
important topics as well. So take care,
Yeah, I appreciate
Kenyatta,
you
and
being
thank
the
you very
guest.
much.
Okay. All right. Thank you so
Bye.
much. Bye, everyone.